all we truly control is our time. What we choose at any given moment to how we spend our time, that is who we are. So how you value your time, what you do with your time, that reflects everything about who you are in your life. How many people are you able to impact? And the gift that you have to be alive in this world today, the miracle of your birth, to me, is you've got to choose what your value, get clarity on what your values are, and choose how you're going to spend your time.
Ryan, I absolutely loved this podcast with Lisen Stromberg. She was one of the operators of the 3% movement, and now she's got her own jam in PrismWorks. But she is a complete thought leader on the future of work, and she's actually teaching a course at Stanford that I think you and I are going to go to.
Well, I hope we get to go to it. I mean, I left that conversation so energized. I want to go break down walls and, just blow things up and start something new. Her energy is contagious. And I think like one of the important things that we talk about is how it's okay to take a pause, especially in the culture that we're in, where we're in this never enough, this rat race, this continual wheel, but it's okay to pause. And you can actually thrive from that pause. And she proves that in the book she wrote. And she's talked to so many interesting people. And it was just really heartwarming to hear about, how we can kind of relook at the reward system that we have here in both business and the culture here in America.
I thought the case she made for the shift that's happening in business, where it used to be all about the shareholder, and now it's about the stakeholder. And are you really listening to your team and the demands of what they want? She said millennials expect diversity in the workplace. My hope is we all expect it, but we go into deep detail on it here. Enjoy. I got to tell you, if I were going to start a new company today, Lisen Stromberg would be a first round lottery pick for me, hands down.
Oh God!
I don't even know you on that. I don't even know you yet, Lisen, and everything I've read, I 100% agree.
Love you guys. I'm just going to follow you around all day.
All right, Thompson, you get the first question then. Why do you agree with this idea?
Well, I'm so focused on culture right now. It's I think it's just the time of life that I'm in. I have a 5-month-old. And so I went through, and I have a soon-to-be 3-year-old too.
Oh, congrats.
So I was at Caesars Entertainment when we had the 3-year-old, and we got 2 weeks paternity leave. They've since upped that to a month, so they're trying. But with my 3-month-old, my 5-month-old, I got 2 weeks. I had gone to a new company, and I was freaking out. I had anxiety about going back to work. And I just think there's this huge stigma, right? Never enough. Yeah. You have to really pursue this crazy schedule to be an executive in a company, right? I was an executive at Caesars, and it just doesn't provide you the opportunity for the time needed to pause and bond with your new child. So I just think what you're doing is so important, and the data and information you're getting back is so interesting. And this may be a really long-winded answer to a very short question, but how do we change the workplace culture in America? I mean, you've done all this work, and I think it's so important, and maybe you can just share a little bit of background on the work you're doing for our guests. But, we have a big cultural issue here in America where we're putting work before family, mental health, all these other things that are so important. So if you can give us just a little bit of background on what you've been working on, what you found important, and then maybe some insight into where do you think we can make some massive cultural shifts, and how does that happen?
Well, Ryan, first of all, thanks for that small question. But more importantly, thank you for laying out what I know to be true. You know, my generation of women, we came of age, and we really thought we had to be the ideal worker. We had to, and we still believe that, by the way, that we had to be there available 24/7, that if we wanted to rise up the ladder, the only way to do it was to be all in all the time. And if we had children, well, you know, ignore them or deny them or even ignore the fact that you're a mother. And what's powerful to me is I'm seeing the next generation of men now saying that they're saying the same things that I said to myself. Ryan, your words were my words, you know, 20 years ago when I was having my young children, which is both heartbreaking and also heartwarming. It's heartbreaking that the next generation, we haven't solved this. It's heartwarming to hear the men stepping up and saying, I want to be actively engaged fathers. I want to actually figure out how to be great in my career and also great in my family life. So that gives me amazing hope. So you've just given me a huge gift. Thank you.
That's wonderful to hear.
But the bigger question is sort of how do we change workplace culture? And here's the thing, again, with that kind of half glass full mindset, I call it the abundance mindset as opposed to the scarcity mindset. Kind of what do we see and what are the trends that we're already seeing? So at a macro level, what's exciting is we're seeing the, you know, Business Roundtable telling us in 2019 that the workplace, you know, and that companies, their value is no longer just about shareholder value. It's about stakeholder value. And stakeholders, who's a huge stakeholder when it comes to companies' employees, right? Especially in the knowledge economy. So we're starting to see sort of the titanic shift, maybe avoid the iceberg, right? And to me, that's really exciting at the very largest level. We're also seeing the next generation of leaders, men and women, that are coming in saying, I don't believe in the ideal worker model. It's not working. And I want something different. I want ambition that isn't just hierarchical, but it's also, it's not, it's vertical and horizontal. I want both. And to me, that's an incredibly exciting thing too, because then we're able to really look at what does success look like as individuals, right? And then finally, look, COVID's been hard on all of us, and my heart goes out to so many who've lost their jobs, who've lost family members, myself included. I mean, it's been tough. And there are silver linings, and the silver linings are, you're seeing my house. You would have never seen that before. My coworkers, my colleagues, your colleagues, you know, we're seeing people in their real places, and we're not going to lose that. We're craving that truth, and that authenticity, that truth, that's going to change, I believe, so much in the long term. So I have high hopes.
Yeah, I love the fact that I can go have lunch with my daughter, and it's easy, right? That's pretty special. And I think yes, it's hard to balance everything going on at home and having your kids walk in during a conference call, all that stuff that's going on. But I mean, what in your experience are the fears of taking a break?
It's really powerful. So we back to that ideal worker model, right? The idea that that someone would not be all in all of the time is the belief that they're not ambitious, right? We've equated all in all the time with ambition. What we haven't really looked at is the data that shows us, in fact, the most productive people are people who actually do navigate breaks, be it a break in the day, a break in the week, a break in the year, a break in the lifetime. And so when you actually look at the data longitudinally over careers, there's tons of research that shows the most productive, the most effective people are actually people who do maybe perhaps downshift. And I don't mean necessarily leave full time. It could be literally just where do you put the careers, on the front burner or is the back burner? Where do you put the job in any given moment? And when we start actually looking at productivity that way, we're starting to realize, oh, it's okay to do that. But it's an interesting question because we look at people who, for example, I'm seeing this huge rise of parents and non-parents and conflict around that, particularly during COVID. Many non-parents were the responsibilities were foisted on them. And that breaks my heart that we didn't as a team say, hey, you know, Lisen loves to run marathons. I don't, I wish I do, it's aspirational, but, you know, but she doesn't have young kids anymore. So she can take on more responsibility, sure, but she still needs a break to be able to go run her marathons, right? So how do we as teams, as leaders, how can we construct our teams so that we're looking at what needs to get done and collaborating so that it does get done, and not making it just on Ryan Thompson's shoulders or Lisen Stromberg's shoulders. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I had no idea how much time I was going to lose, or myself, like my identity with having kids. And you just go through all the hormonal changes, everything going on. I mean, the bonding that happens, that's necessary, and the effect it has. But I actually have a bigger question here in terms of what is the government's role in this, right? So I'll give you an example. California is fantastic, right? They're very forward thinking as a state. Nevada, not so much. I was in Nevada. They provided no additional support during this period of time. And I get like this comparison of kids, families versus people who don't have families. And it's a weird dichotomy. So I don't know if you've dug into that at all, but I know America ranks way, way, way at the bottom, right? Which is crazy for how progressive this country is in so many spaces. And then you have all these differences in states and how they address these issues. But my brother-in-law is Irish, and they'll take a year off to spend with their kids or to travel. And I know when I had employees out and traveling and experiencing new things, they'd come back re-energized, new ideas, and being in hospitality, that's super powerful, right? But what is government, states, just like, I guess your country's policy on this, how much does that impact the space?
So thank you for asking that powerful question. At a bigger level, what frustrates me is that we as individuals think it's our responsibility to solve this. And we don't look at this as a collective good. We don't see this as a collective responsibility. And so as a result, Ryan's trying to figure it out, Lisa's trying to figure it out, we're all struggling to figure it out on our level, as opposed to understanding that collectively we can come up with common good solutions that actually benefit all of us. My mother was born and raised in Norway, and I have a cousin who is my exact same age with exact same age children. And I actually write about her in my book, Pause Thrive, where I literally deconstruct Norway's policies and the US policies, and why was it so seamless for her to integrate work and family, and so awful for me to integrate work and family. And the question really comes down to both a collective belief in what does the role of family play, and a governmental policies. So back into governmental policies, you've heard the statistic, but I'll say it again. There's, I think, 192 countries in the UN. Only 2 don't offer paid parental leave. That would be the United States and Papua New Guinea. And interestingly, Papua New Guinea is now, I understand, they're now looking at changing that this year. So we will be the only country in the United Nations who doesn't offer paid parental leave. There's other countries that, and the vast majority that don't just offer paid parental leave, they have universal health care. They have mandatory paid sick leave, mandatory paid vacations, all paid at the government level. The argument, of course, is that their taxes are higher. And so, what a pain, that shouldn't be the burden. But in fact, when you actually do the math, when you do the math of my life in California versus my cousin's life in Norway, and yes, our policies are slightly better here in California. We don't have universal health care, et cetera. But the point being, she's not paying that much more taxes than I am. And yet the experience is 100% different. And so an organization I invite everyone to become a member of, it's paidleave.us. Please go sign up and start supporting them. They are working at literally the city level, the state level and the national level to try and change at least paid leave. And I don't have a lot of good things to say about our soon-to-be ex-president. However, one thing that I am going to give him a shout out for is that he provided government workers with paid parental leave, which no one really talks about. But I have people that I've interviewed that are actually now wanting to work for the government because that means they get paid parental leave because they live in Nevada and they need to have it, right? So that's a good thing. Let's see more of that.
You think that'll stick around?
Oh, I don't only think it'll stick around. I actually think it'll go. If I can see anything, I would love to be right in this prediction that we'll see universal paid parental leave in the next 4 years, given that we've got now the House, the Senate, and a executive branch that are passionate about this.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. Ryan was talking about, we live in this progressive country, and my question to you is like, are we really progressive, or we just can't see it because we're in it? And so maybe the question to you is, let's say we have just signed together the United States of America as a client. All right, congrats everybody. This is our new brand.
How do we make them courageous?
How do we make them courageous? And let's go back to the values. Where do we need to redo on the values? And if you were now running this brand for our team that we've just co-founded together, congrats. Where would you start?
Well, the first thing I would do is what I always do is an assessment. Where is it working, where it's not working? We already know this. The data is out there, right? Look at the under-resourced women and men who actually don't have support. They don't have universal health care. They don't have paid parental leave. I think it's fascinating that we have this bias against mothers who are under-resourced, who aren't in the paid workforce, and bias against mothers who are over-resourced, who are in the paid workforce. So we have this kind of hidden bias about what motherhood looks like, right? So how do you create a system that can remove some of those biases so that we all have paid parental leave, we all have universal health care, we all have paid child care? There's some family issues here that actually will benefit the economics of our country, right? So Janet Yellen said that we're getting hit at a $9 billion rate by seeing college-educated women leave the paid workforce on an annual basis. I mean, that to our GDP, we could use that. Now, of course, trillions, we're talking trillions at this point, but still, everybody counts. How do we get every productive American in the workforce? Well, part of it is providing them with the resources they need. So the first thing is the assessment. The second thing is getting out there and creating policies that are universal and aren't selective and aren't state by state. I am a bit of a federalist in that way.
Okay, so let's say we come out of all this assessment work and you now have to make a hunch on the top 3 values of America moving forward.
I would really do a lot of leadership training on collaboration and on understanding the benefit of a collective good, right? As opposed to the huge, we've been trained, we're immersed in our countries built around individualism, and God bless us, that's wonderful. But I think the false narrative around that is that it's a meritocracy. Black and brown people are suffering, immigrants are suffering. We have this duality structure and we need to change that. We need to go back to our original values, which is we want to create the country where people can truly thrive, and we haven't done that.
Yeah, I don't know if the parallels are fully there, but I'll say it sure feels similar of what's going on in the country from a leadership standpoint to what is also going on inside a lot of corporations from a leadership standpoint. Like, you have to want to be helped, right? There needs to be some open-mindedness, some willingness in terms of a full paradigm shift. And I think we are seeing it. But as you stated, it was only because the natives were restless.
Yes.
Right. Well, and so now the shareholders are finally coming in here and are saying, hey, things need to change.
Well, look what's just happened this last week, right? When did you ever think that the American Manufacturing Association would condemn the president of the United States, who actually has financially benefited them? When did you think all those Republicans, who frankly have stayed quiet for quite a long time, would finally stay up and say, no, enough is enough? I think what's happening, which I think is really exciting, is the democratization of you get a vote, right? We don't have the electoral college anymore when it comes to social media and companies, right? We actually have every person's vote counts. So when you have social media basically allowing Ryan at one company to talk to Lisen at another company and to sort of have a conversation about, oh my God, what's the leadership like? What's your parental leave like? Where should I be working? Or how do we respond to this crisis? What works? And then it's public. To me, that kind of transparency is amazing, and it's a watchdog in a beautiful way. We've got a universal watchdog, which can be shaming. We've got cancel culture, and I'm not a fan of cancel culture at all, because I do believe people need to be given a chance to learn and grow and change. However, at least we have the opportunity to get out there and create awareness about these issues.
Yeah, I think the watchdog is the stakeholder.
Exactly.
And so the stakeholder now has a say, and it actually matters.
Well, right. Look, I think it's really exciting when we see the NASDAQ saying, hey, you need to have women on boards if you want to be listed in our, on the NASDAQ. We've got BlackRock saying, yeah, we're not going to invest in you if you don't have it. Goldman Sachs saying, we're not going to take you public if you don't have more diverse people on your boards. And the state of California actually putting it in as a mandate, a legal mandate. So you've got all these forces that aren't just from the bottom up, but it's also from the top down. And to me, I think that's forcing change, and very quickly.
Can you tell us a little bit about PrismWork and HEART? And so HEART stands for humility, empathy, accountability, resiliency, transparency, and inclusivity, correct?
Yeah, HEARTI, exactly right. Exactly right. Okay. So here's the thing. When I was running 3%, we did amazing work in the advertising agencies, in the advertising industries, and we were certifying agencies about what they could do to actually be kind of best in class for women, primarily. I loved the work, and I wanted to take it beyond just the advertising industry. And more importantly, I wasn't seeing many companies out there doing this kind of, how do you assess culture? How do you truly create an environment where the internal culture matches the external marketing, right? To go back, think about that really adorable Fearless Girl campaign, right? I mean, adorable maybe is a little condescending, but it created this incredible momentum with that little statue right in front of that, Wall Street Bull, pay equity. Oh my God, go State Street, go. Did anyone actually do the assessment on State Street to understand that in the midst of that campaign, they were having 3, 4, 5 pay equity lawsuits? They had no women on their board. They had no women in leadership. That's bad marketing, right? It's like if your internal isn't matching your external, you're going to get shamed these days. And I'm really impressed when companies go out and do the work where their external is matching their internal. Ultimate Software, they're all about creating HR platforms, and pay equity is something they care passionately about. So before they did any advertising, they actually went inside to make sure they could validate that they are delivering pay equity. That kind of smart move to me is where I think we're going to see brands and companies moving in the future. But I didn't see any companies. I saw a lot of great advertising, don't get me wrong, but I didn't see companies doing the internal assessment. I wanted to provide that solution. So that's where PrismWork came about, is to partner to provide that solution with companies, right? How's your internal and your external look? And internally, how can we up-level you so that you can actually tell the stories that you want to tell and do the work you want to do? HEARTI came about because we were looking at what does leadership need and what does culture need? What are those metrics that really define great leadership? And yes, there are governance policies and brand policies and employee engagement they were looking at, but we were looking at leadership, and we were seeing these patterns through our research and also through kind of organizational design, psychological research, everything. And we pulled together what we saw were the core traits of leadership in the 21st century. And that is the HEARTI traits. That's, again, humility, empathy, accountability, transparency, resiliency, transparency, inclusivity. And that's how HEARTI came about. And what's really cool, it's so exciting, we're now in the process of, we were sort of in stealth this last fall as we were building all these things. And we're now in the process of piloting a number of our programs. And leaders are just saying, you're shifting the paradigm for me because you're giving me tools and insights as a leader to actually be able to change both myself, but also my culture. And that is exciting.
That is super exciting. I'm curious, who's in the room with you when you're going through this? Because I've talked about this before. We talked to a lot of executives, CMOs, and I truly believe there is a difference between internal and external messaging. And when you can align those, and companies that really focus internal first are the ones that I believe are the most powerful. So where do you start? I'm sure C-suite, but who else is really important in making sure that there is a shift internally? And then have you seen any effect on the external yet?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we're new, so let's start there.
Sure.
as I predicted, one of our clients brought us on, or a couple of our clients have done this already. They bring us on, we do the internal, and then they're like, well, can you help us do the external as well, right? So we're starting internally, building the framework, if you will, so that they can get out there and do the work externally. So we're as I anticipated, that's exactly what's happening, which is so exciting. But your big question was, who are we talking to? And the thing that's really important is we start obviously at that senior executive level, and it cannot just be the head of HR. It cannot just be the head of marketing. It cannot just be, the chief diversity officer. It also has to be the COO, the CFO, the CEO, right? All of these people, all of these leaders have to be bought into the notion that this has to change, or you're going to get blocked and you're not going to see the real change. What's really exciting is that with one of our clients, we had one of their managing partners said to us, I didn't think this was going to be worth our money. Come on, it's 2020. We're laying people off. I feel that we shouldn't be investing in this. And he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't get what you would be able to tell us and show us. To me, to have that sort of skeptic tell us, we were able to shift both his narrative and also the work he's doing and how he's leading was incredibly rewarding. But the other people, you can't, if it sits in the C-suite, it's never going to go anywhere. So it also has to be in partnership with the employees. And what's amazing to me is that you have people at every level who want to engage. When you invite them to be part of the solution, and when you say, hey, we're going to create a task force on this issue that we want to try and solve, and we want to create these hubs, these spokes and hubs, all this stuff, great stuff starts happening. And more importantly, all this great stuff starts getting unearthed that's already happening in the organization. For example, one of our clients, this whole division didn't realize this other division had actually done amazing work on diversity and inclusion and amazing work on how to create teams. So we were able to say, you don't need us. You just need to talk to each other. You need to talk to you so that you two can actually learn from each other. I mean, that's the success to me when it's inside, look, I want to get hired again and again. That's awesome. But truth of the matter is I want to empower them to actually learn the skills. So you're not having to go external all the time. Right.
I imagine that.
Sorry.
I imagine that you have the same sort of battle that we have at Courageous, which is it's really hard to convince someone, which never works, by the way, that why do they need to be courageous? What is the financial ramifications of doing so? Mm-hmm. And I imagine you're running into some of the similar, again, when someone comes back to you and there's in 2020 that their narrative could be bent so much from what they thought. They didn't think they were going to get anything out of this. And here we are. Why is that the case? And also, where do you start? Because for me, even so our book, right? Return on Courage. ROC is how you maximize your ROI. I had to take it to a financial place first and work backwards. What are you using? If you were going to try to tell me why I should hire you, are there 1 to 3 financial numbers you just start with right out of the gate?
You can start with any number you want. It doesn't work. And the answer is because no one believes it. They just don't get it. Right. And it's not that they don't get it because they're not smart and capable and don't know their business, et cetera. It's that it's hard. Change is hard. So my experience is really speaking to, oftentimes what happens with us is that someone's in pain. Either the leader's in pain because they've either been shamed or they're not meeting their numbers or publicly they've been, the company's been called to task. Happy companies don't think they have a problem, even though frankly many of them do, right? But happy companies don't think they have a problem. But it's when they're in that point of pain, or they've got a really truly evangelist leader who gets that he or she wants to create the company that is amazing. So we're seeing now leaders step up and say, I don't want this to be the default or a reactive or how to fix it. I want to build it, and I want to build it right. To me, that's really exciting. So those are the leaders I love working with. The Center for Talent Innovation did some really fascinating research. And what they did was they looked at majority men in 2020 around the conversation of diversity and inclusion. And predominantly, they were talking about white men. and actually white straight men. And what I thought was really interesting, if you look at that data that they have, what they found out is that the men who were, I think their words were evangelists, but that might be the wrong word, but the men who truly owned it, who got it, they were much more likely to be in the C-suite than the men who were detractors. So they'd said about 20% of the survey respondents were detractors. They didn't believe there was any benefit of diversity and inclusion. They didn't believe that any of this mattered. And those men weren't rising to the top. What was fascinating is that the men who were rising to the top were the ones who get it and now just want to figure out how to do it. It wasn't they didn't get it, they just wanted the tools. When you've got that client, it's a dream come true, and you're not going to change the detractors. Why waste your energy there? Spend your time with the people who get it, but now want to do it.
Yeah, correct. Same thing. It's like the whole point of the brand, courageous, right? Is it also tells you who we're not for.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, do you guys teach a course on helping people be more aware?
And when you say more aware of
self-awareness,
like unconscious bias, or what are you talking about?
I think unconscious bias is a real thing, but to me, this comes down to like open-mindedness, willingness, and self-awareness, and understanding where you sit in this. And to me, diversity and inclusion, even the concept of, it's a bit sad that it takes, now that I've been shamed, that I want to fix this problem, when really, when you step back from it, to me, diversity and inclusion has never been about checking a box. It's about helping you think outside your box. And it's like from different perspectives, a collision of ideas. And alas, our idea bubbles to the top because it's gone through your lens and my lens. We now have the best idea to take to the market.
Yeah. You're articulating kind of HEARTI at its heart, right? So HEARTI you're saying, do you have a class to teach people, or a course to teach people be aware? That's humility. Am I humble enough to think I don't know what I don't know, but I'm curious enough to get out there and try and figure it out? That's humility. Am I empathetic enough to figure out, I want to understand their lived experience, because that actually will help me be a better leader? Am I accountable enough? Am I creating programs and policies and governance and making sure that we're doing the things that we've learned, right? Are we resilient enough when we screw up to actually keep trying and doing it again and again, as opposed to getting scared and running away? Are we transparent enough to tell the story that, hey, we didn't really understand it. We're learning more and more. We're figuring it out. We're going to try and get it right, but we're going to tell you as we go along the story. And is it all rooted in inclusivity, right? Are we really understanding that we are going to be more successful as individuals in the company when all boats rise and we all both thrive? So to me, that's HEARTI 101. And we do a lot of teaching around that. We've got workshops and we've got leadership training. I teach a class at Stanford. It is so exciting to be having global leaders. Like we just taught one in the fall. We're teaching one in the spring. We had 31 leaders. We capped the class at 30, and this one person's like, please, I need to come. So it's 31 leaders globally. We had India, Colombia, Mexico, Asia, coming in to learn about how they can be leaders in the new world of work. And it's so exciting. And of course, we also do that in a consolidated way through PrismWork.
I think it should be a requirement. Honestly, I'm curious. I always look for the root. Why isn't this happening earlier in life? Like, you don't get trained on EQ as a kid unless you have great parents. We've talked about this before on the podcast. And it's like, HEARTI could be applied to high school. It could be applied to middle school. Like, why are there any programs that you're aware of that's looking at the educational system before you get to Stanford? And by the way, I think Berman and I will both be coming to Stanford to take this course.
Oh, I love it. I'll send a link to you when we get it. It's in the spring. I'd love to have you there. You guys should be on the class. You could teach it. So it's really interesting. My business partner, Corey Jones, has been applying HEARTI to some volunteer work that he does. He's on Saturdays teaches a course for, I have to get this right, people who've basically been arrested and can take a class, been arrested for maybe they've done something wrong, but they don't want to go to jail, and they can take this class and actually get out of it. And he's been using the HEARTI model to help them realize the impact of how they can be in their world. And these classes come from, everyone from the 8th grade graduate to PhDs who did something wrong and now they have to figure out how to redeem themselves. So let's not get confused about who's attending this Saturday class with him. What's fascinating to him and to me is that this is applying. These aren't people in the business world. These are everyday, Joes and Jills who are trying to figure out how to navigate their world. They've made a mistake. They're looking for redemption. They want tools. And HEARTI is giving them a tool of how do I behave in this world in a way that's different? How can I do this with dignity and with grace? And that to me is so exciting. It's interesting, Carol Dweck at Stanford does a lot of work around scarcity mindset and abundance mindset and understanding growth mindset, understanding that our brains and our capacity to learn are there always, which is rooted in that abundance mindset. If you believe that the more you learn, you're going to be better, that's going to drive you. And so following her is a great way to get informed about growth mindset. I think we should be teaching growth mindset in, to your point, kindergarten and everything. Actually, I think we do. It's just that we lose it over time, frankly. Remember that? What did you learn in kindergarten? Right? Share your toys, wait your turn.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think about this a lot, just, being in advertising and marketing most of my career is looking at a lens through a child's eyes. Is untainted. There's just such wonderment and honesty there, and you lose that as you get older, and you become more pessimistic as you get older. And there's something around intrinsic motivators there, right? And like what truly makes people feel happy. And we believe that courage helps set you free, and that courage is defined by having faith, knowledge, and action, and you need all three of those working to get to courage. You can't just have two. And I'm curious if you've thought about courage at all, or bravery, or however you want to think about that, and why does it matter?
Well, let me start with, I love faith, knowledge, and action, right? If you don't start with faith, and that can be faith either in yourself, faith in in clarity for what you stand for, right? And faith that you're going to be able to weather that storm. You might get canceled, you might, whatever. That kind of courage to me is so inspiring. And I love that you start with faith. So kudos to you guys. I think that's amazing. I don't think you can be brave without that. And I think if I can think of anything we often don't do, it's lacking, we as leaders don't do, it's lacking bravery. We had, last week, we had one of our clients call sort of frantic, and he was trying to figure out, how do I speak about this? He came of age where you didn't mix politics and business. You didn't mix religion and business. That was sort of something you did. And we had to kind of map for him how he could be brave in this moment, when people were storming the Citadel, right? Storming our national capital. What does it look like to be brave as a leader in that environment? And how do you speak to your teams? And how do you speak to your company? And it was so beautiful to watch him become brave in the journey of figuring out how is he going to say what he wanted to say, what he was truly feeling. To me, that's so inspiring. I just love that.
And what about you, Lisen? I mean, is there a moment or a couple moments that you could share with the listeners around when you've displayed courage, either professionally or personally, and overcome fears? I think it's really about facing fears and knowing that, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I still move through it, having the knowledge, the faith, and then taking action. Is there something in your life you can?
Let me be really clear. It happens every day. Let's start with, I was nervous to get up. I know you both. Well, Brian Thompson, we've newly met, but I know of you, right? Ryan Berman and I have been friends for a long time. We often have conversations. I was nervous about getting on this thing. Oh my God, am I going to remember what I know? Do I know anything? Why do I want to talk to me? Right? That whole imposter thing. So let's start with that. But I think, so I think it's really powerful when you speak your truth and other people, and you give permission to other people. So when I wrote my book, Work, Pause, Thrive, I told my story and I wove my story through it. And I did that because I felt that by being as honest as I could be with my story, it might actually help someone else. And it was that service to others, to me, that gave me courage to say, it's okay to talk about the fact that, I'm not sure my career was where I wanted it to go. It certainly wasn't where I planned it to be. How do I feel about that? Because I paused my career, and was that a failure? Did I screw up? Should I have not done that? Oh, by the way, it meant about $1.5 million to our family's bottom line. That was kind of stupid. Did I really not know that? Like, how did I not plan for that? But I'll give an example. When I was at 3%, I was on stage, and we had this moment where we were talking about issues around diversity and inclusion, about culture, and a member of our audience, a really wonderful, who's become a great friend, Derek Walker, spoke up and called us out and said, "You're not being honest." And instead of taking a pause and really diving into that conversation, I moved on to kind of the next thing. Oh my God, white privilege at its moment, right? I had things to do. And for me, the courage was stepping up and owning that and writing about it, and, getting out there and being public about it and saying, wow, that was one of the many times I recognized when I just don't know what I don't know.
By the way, that is so Derek Walker, and I love Derek to tears. In all, like, perfectly Derek to call somebody out on stage.
Oh, and it was awesome. I'm glad he did. It was such a powerful learning moment for me. But let's take last week. I'll give you a fail from last week, because why not, right? So it was Wednesday, right? The 6th, the day we're never going to forget. And I'm starting to see my son texts me first. Oh my God, can you see what's happening in the Capitol? Now, meanwhile, that day I had to prep for another interview I was doing. I was finishing off an article I was writing. I had a board meeting I was prepping for. I had 2 client deliverables, and I had a new business prep I had to get by the end of that day. This is all on Wednesday. Things are coming in, and then I had team members emailing and calling and texting. And what privilege I had to be able to take a moment to say, am I going to focus on this? Duh, of course I am. But the ideal worker in me, the focus on the cult of productivity, the cult on getting stuff done, I was so far down that path, it took me a moment to get into my humanity and say, what the hell am I thinking? This is really important. And I think that, to me, is such a lesson in, 1, my privilege, but also 2, my attachment to productivity, right? And we need to do that. We need to change that. I want to change that. I'm not there. I still am working on it every day.
Well, I love the humanity piece, and it's true. And this has come up multiple times on the show as well. But like someone once said, it takes you 40 years to figure out who you are, and the next 40 to be that person.
Exactly. Well, I got a long way to go, and I'm well past 40. So.
Well, I want to go back to what you said, though. Like, we learn these things in kindergarten.
Yes.
Right. And then something happens along the way. And for me, that's something that happened along the way might have been trying to fit in high school, or
right. In middle school for me.
Be cool in college, or whatever, wherever it came in. And then for me, trying to survive New York City at a 700-person creative agency. And I described my time in New York City like a treadmill on 10.0. It doesn't slow down for anyone. And if you can get on and not bust your chin, you can stick around for a while. But then you get into that rat race, and you sacrifice yourself 1% at a time per year. I'm talking about myself, by the way.
Yeah.
So go back to what Ryan said earlier. Why aren't we creating a process to implement things like HEARTI earlier in our lives? And is it on us? Like, how did we waver so much? And what do we do about it?
Well, like, we wavered because the construct of corporate America is built on the 1950s military, right? The World War II, all these, men came out of the war. We wanted to do something with them, and we literally militarized corporate America. That's literally what happened. The idea of hierarchy, the idea of structure, and that's been our structure ever since, right? And so we all came of age believing, we live in a capitalist culture, right? Corporations drive so much of what we do. We came of age believing that ideal worker model was the model we have. That's what success looks like. well, what if we actually change what success looks like? What if we change it so Ryan Thompson can take off a year for his children, which, by the way, looking at research in Canada, Sweden, and Norway, that year that men spend actually means that their children are physically healthier, they're more engaged at school, ultimately are more successful in life, and their wives are more engaged in the workplace, which is better for the overall economy and the family. Why don't we look at that as success as opposed to that short term, oh, well, he's gone for 2 weeks. Oh my God. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have such, in the United States in particular, short-term mindset around what does it mean for shareholder value? Because that's what matters. It's a bottom line result. It's all about the bottom line. What if we have to reframe that? And, do we start earlier? I think yes, but really, frankly, why not start right now with us? I don't want to I so get tired of this. Oh, it's a pipeline issue. No, it's not. It's friggin' our issue right now, right here, today. We need to change it. We have to have accountability around that.
All right. I have one more me issue thing to ask your help of. And I think it's a courageous one for me to bring up. And I think it's an obvious one, but it's like, you take Me Too, you take this focus on racial and social justice, you pour it in a cocktail, and like, well, where's the issue? Well, as a straight white man, right, 90% of me feels embarrassed and 10% of me feels attacked.
Right.
So
and on any given day, like, which one's more and more rising up, right? So shame is not a driver for change. Shame is a driver for anger and resistance and actually sublimating our emotions. So I am not a fan. This is why I can't stand cancel culture, because I am not a fan of shaming people, because I don't think it gets the end that what we want. It doesn't actually drive the change we're looking for. We want Ryan Berman to be the most evolved human being he can be, so he can be a change agent we all need, right? So let's start there. The other thing that's really important to recognize is straight white men, you guys still rule the world around here. Last I checked, you're still, running the world. So why not actually become partners and friends and, collaborators for change with that community, right? To me, isolating and antagonizing and creating a no solution for any of us who are doing our best every day to be the best humans we can be, to me, is not a productive way to change and to get the change we all want. So in fact, for example, two of my partners and I, the amazing book, The Good Guys. If you guys haven't read Good Guys from Brad Johnson and Dave Smith, they're collaborators with PrismWork. Dave was a Navy pilot. He was a professor in the Naval Academy. He's now at the War College. Brad is a sociologist, PhD, who's done all this work. They both have their PhDs. These guys are amazing straight white men who wrote an amazing book called Good Guys. Every guy needs to read it. And we do a lot of training for men. So we have workshops for men to help them be really leaders. And my whole point is, it's not about allyship, because frankly, allyship is a power dynamic. Oh, I, white woman, can help you, black woman, get more power. Baloney. You have so much to teach me. I don't believe in that at all. I believe in kind of co-conspirator. How can we change it together to get back to our original conversation, the country, the government, the world we want? So, creating a power dynamic where you, Ryan Berman, anoint me with your, and sponsor me or mentor me. I have as much to teach you as you have to teach me. And that's together why we're going to make change. So that's why we talk about it in terms of HEARTI, and we talk about it in terms of 21st century leadership, and talk less about allyship and, all of that.
So much in there. I mean, shame sits in the boardroom, and it's so dangerous. And I don't know. I've been working personally to change that for my kids. It starts with one person, right? And you influence others. And I believe that. And just the reward system that we have in corporate America is in need of a big overhaul. Couldn't agree more with that. I'm coming off of taking, how many months now, Berman? Berman's been like, get back to work.
2 years. No,
yeah. No, I think I'm going on 4 months now. Mm-hmm. It's been the best thing I've done. I haven't stopped working since I was 15.
Exactly.
And I'm just curious. I mean, you just packed a whole bunch of advice there, but if you were talking to somebody who is starting their career right now and had the opportunity to design their life, what would you tell them?
Okay, so let's start with the women I interviewed for my book. So I interviewed 186 women, surveyed 1,500 more. And the women I interviewed that just were living their best lives, the lives that we all want to lead, right? Which didn't necessarily mean they were at the top of their game, top of the ladder. They were the women who really understood a couple of things. One, time, all we truly control is our time, right? What we choose at any given moment to how we spend our time, that is who we are. So how you value your time, what you do with your time, that reflects everything about who you are in your life. So getting to get clarity about what you value and what your human capital means in this world, meaning, what are you going to do? What impact are you going to have? And I'm not talking about mamby-pamby, look, I grew up in Marin County in the 70s, so there's a lot of new age Lisa in here. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm literally talking about how many people are you able to impact, and the gift that you have to be alive in this world today, the miracle of your birth, to me, is you've got to choose what your value, get clarity on what your values are, and choose how you're going to spend your time. And then when you're doing that at any given moment, reassess. Last week I failed. Last week, when the calls were coming in and, the White House or the Capitol was imploding, I didn't use my time wisely. My instinct was to go back in and be productive and be that ideal worker. And then I took a step back and said, wait a minute, what matters right now? What matters to the people I care about, to the world? What matters? What's most important? And that recalibrating any given moment to me is powerful. I mean, people meditate for this very reason, right? It's like, how can you get back into that mindfulness moment? I want to just say one thing kind of separately, which is you had mentioned shame. And one of my previous iterations in my very nonlinear career, that would be my other advice, is follow your curiosity. Because if you can't have a nonlinear career, I think you're failing, frankly. Those people who stay in the same job and work their way up, God bless them. For me, that's not a solution. I had to follow my curiosity. And in one of my iterations, I was a social entrepreneur. I started and ran a nonprofit called Supporting Our Sons. And it came out of the understanding that I'd spent my life working on supporting women and girls and realized there was a huge void for men and boys. And so I partnered with an amazing man, Dr. William Pollack, who wrote Real Boys, which is another book I encourage every man to read, particularly every father, about how to be a great advocate for young men and boys. And what we did was we actually created training programs for parents and for teachers. And it was really fascinating. We actually ended up closing our doors because we couldn't get funding because funders were telling us, well, girls are the ones who need help. And I'm like, people, if we don't help the boys, we're not going to get the men we want. And that's going to be a problem, right? So long story short, I really think you men have a special role right now. We mothers also have a special role because we are raising the next generation. And if we're not supporting our men to be in touch with their hearty selves, with their true emotional well-being, and as well as empowering our daughters to sort of look at their empowered selves, I think we're failing.
We could talk to you all day, Lisa. This is
Love this. This is so fun.
So I'm not surprised that this was a fast 45. And look, the world, especially America, we need a shift. It does need what you are offering, this concept of 21st century leadership. And my hope is that the business leaders, men in particular, will commit to the shift at the pace that society is shifting. I hope we can get you back on here again. And I like where Ryan said that. We're coming to Stanford. Tell us when to be there.
You got it.
Please send our best to your team. And thanks for coming on the show. It's
a privilege. It's an honor for me to be hanging with you guys because you're the change, right? We need to do it together.
No, you're the change. No, you're the change. All right, Lisa.
Bye,
take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us 5 stars, subscribe, and leave us a comment.
If you like what you just heard, sign up for your weekly dose of courage at returnoncourage.com.